Hey everybody, welcome back to When Harry Met Board Games. I am Harry, and before we go any further, please make sure to hit the like button down below and please subscribe to our channel if you're interested in seeing some more great board game related content. Today we are having a playthrough of Tiny Epic Westerns. This is one of the many games in the Tiny Epic series by Scott Almes, which basically is just a series of games where bigger gaming experiences are contained within smaller packages, right? Good things come in small packages, as they say. So this is a Wild West themed game where players will be attempting to gain influence throughout the different sections of town, different buildings in town, by playing games of poker and using their profits to build buildings and add to their wealth in the city and invest in the three different industries that are growing concurrently, right? We have the three industries represented by the railroad industry, we have the mining industry, and we have the wagon industry. And all of these buildings that we'll be acquiring throughout the course of the game fall in line with one or more of these different industries, and we will score accordingly by having the majority, the secondary, or the tertiary in these different, well, actually just primary and secondary. Actually, tertiary is irrelevant. But whichever industry is the most profitable will score more points for whoever's the primary stockholder in that industry, as opposed to second and third will score you a few less points. Now, this is a game that involves a poker, hand management, and poker play. And it also involves a little bit of worker placement, or a lot of bit of worker placements, as we'll be playing our workers, which we have two standard cowboy meeples here, which we could always count on. And occasionally we'll have a third meeple or a third worker we can count on, represented by this figure here that we will have laying down instead of standing up, instead of upright, to indicate the fact that this cowboy is not readily available for us at all times. Each player will be taking a special role card. I am the banker, and the banker or these different roles will give you different special abilities, different advantages that make you different than the other players. Every player will be starting with three different resources. You have the law resource, you have the money or coin resource, and you have the gun slinging power resource, represented by this right here. So these are the three different resources, and we each start at one resource apiece, and we have a maximum capacity of 6 for each of the respective resources. And as we gain resources throughout the game through our different actions, we will signify that by moving our different tokens here representing the different resources along the track over here. Now, the banker gives me a special ability, and what he lets me do is at the beginning of phase 3, each round, there's 6 rounds in this game, each round consists of 4 different phases. At the beginning of phase 3, I get to gain any one resource for every 2 building cards I have bought. So if I have 2 buildings, I'll be able to gain any one resource of my choice at the beginning of phase 3. If I have 4 buildings, I'll be able to gain any 2 resources, but it will have to be of the same type, right? And so on and so forth. If I have 6, I could get 3. So that's what the banker allows me to do. Now, I will be playing a solo game of this game. This game accommodates anywhere from 1 through 4 players. With the solo version, there is a dummy player represented by these yellow cowboy meeples. So there is a threat. This is not a typical solitaire solo version where you're just trying to score the most points. Here you do have an artificial intelligence, so to speak, an AI opponent who will be competing for influence in these different areas in the town. Now, the way the setup goes, you always have town hall up here at 12 o'clock, and you'll always have the sheriff's office here at 6 o'clock. And then you can randomly choose the way you distribute the other 4 buildings. You have the salon, the courthouse, the bank, and the hideout. And these are double-sided, these locations, because you have the non-colored side that is if the player representing that colored meeple is not in the game, then you turn this the other way. But since I am the green player, this building, the hideout, will flip it over to the green side to show that I'm in the game. And then we also have this building flipped over to the yellow side because the yellow player is in this game. But these two buildings are on the non-colored sides. So we're going to be playing this game. So let me show you how a round goes. So first of all, what we do is we begin phase one by dealing the cards to the different players. So here we go. So I believe we hand one card here in between all of the empty spaces between the buildings. And let's just show what these cards are. All right. So as you can see, all these cards range from 1 through 5. And they have unique suits to them. These are not your typical bicycle deck suits. And the suits have different rankings. And here on the Town Hall card, you'll see a little key here that indicates which suit is the most valuable in the event of tiebreaker. So you have the cowboy hat as number 1, the TP is the second highest, you have the horseshoe, and you have the steer or the bull's head as the lowest valued suit. So we're also going to deal a card here to the rival space. We're actually going to deal 2 cards to the rival space. This rival space in a multiplayer game or in a 2 or more player game would only have 1 card put face down. But because this is going to represent the hand of the dummy player, we're going to have 2 cards here face down. And now you deal to each human player, in that case it only being me, 2 cards as well. And what you're going to do is you're going to look at these 2 cards. I have a 4 of the cowboy hat suit and I have a 2 of the steer suit. What you're going to do is you're going to pick one of these cards. So you're going to try to win poker hands at these different buildings. And the way you win the poker hands is you compare your hands with anybody who's in the same building as you or the same location as you at the end of phase 2 or at the beginning of phase 3. Now, in this case, there's a dummy player. And because the dummy player is an AI and has limited range of motion and options, the way the rules indicate is that for every building that I'm in, the dummy player can automatically compete for control of that building through the playing of the poker hands. So to win a poker hand at a respective building, you've got to look at the 2 cards that are adjacent or that surround that building. So for example, to win control or influence over the sheriff's office, I need to factor in these 2 cards, the 5 TP and the 2 TP. And I'm only going to pick one of these cards, and that card is going to combine with those 2 cards for a game of 3-card poker, right? So I got to look at the buildings where I want to win influence or where I think I can win influence and choose my cards accordingly. So for example, this 2 here would be very helpful because if I do this, I would have a straight at this building, right? I would have the 4, the 3, and the 2. So that would be helpful. Also at this building, I would have the 4 and the 3 and the 2, right? This card, on the other hand, would be very helpful here because it would give me the 5, the 4, and the 3. Wouldn't be too shabby here. I would have a pair of 4s. Also here, I would have a pair of 4s, right? And here I would have a pair of 2s. So this one, again, it gives me 2 straights. So I got to factor these decisions in as I decide which card to take, right? And I got a little bit more time, and I could actually work with it physically speaking because I don't have any human opponents to hide my hand from. So I think I'm interested in keeping the 4, especially for the sake of it being a higher number and a high valued suit, which might help for any potential tie-breaking scenarios because, again, I don't even know the cards that the dummy player has available to it. So I'm just going to discard the 2 face down. You always discard your cards face down. That way your opponents don't know and can't calculate what has been taken out and so on and so forth. So I'm going to remain with the 4. So that's it. Now we move on to phase 2. And in phase 2, by the way, the game comes with these nice little round summary or reference cards that help you if you're not really a poker aficionado or you don't really know a lot about poker. This lets you, it distinguishes the different possible hands and ranks them for you. So you've got the straight flush, the three of a kind, the regular flush, the straight, a pair, and of course, if nobody has anything, high card wins, right? So those are the different rankings for the poker hands. So now that we've moved on with phase one, which is the handing of the poker cards and the making of the decisions, we're going to be playing for we're going to be using our different meeples to gain influence, or at least gain a presence in the different buildings or different locations in town. Now, what we're trying to do is, ultimately, we're trying to win these buildings over here and be able to pay for them, because as we acquire buildings, we're going to acquire influence or shares in the different industries. So for example, this right here is the doctor's office. And first of all, it has a special ability, the doctor's office, that when I get it, I would put it into my porch to indicate possession. Going forward, I would have 1 share in the wagon industry, 1 share in the mining industry, 2 victory points at the end of the game, and if I ever go to my own porch location, I can benefit off of this power, which says stand 1 of your wounded posse tokens up and move it to a new unoccupied placement spot on any location map. So usually when you have a wounded posse member because they've engaged in a shootout or in a duel with another opponent, which I will explain later, then you leave them face down, flat, on their back, and there's nothing they can do for the rest of the round. But this allows you to move one of those wounded posse members into a new unoccupied location. And if your opponent ever goes to your action by placing their meeple on your porch to signify that they want to use your action, they have to, or they don't have to pay you, but you receive 1 resource of your choice as payment for them using your building. So that's the value of getting these different buildings. So I'm going to be, and again, at the end of the game, having the majorities and secondary in these 3 different industries are going to score you points, and you're going to have a say-so at the end of the game as to which industries are the most valuable. This game consists of 6 rounds, and by the time the 6 rounds are done, each of these will be set in either first, second, or third as far as their rankings. So I'm going to do my first action with my meeple here, and I'm going to choose to place them somewhere. So I'm going to place them on this spot right here. And lots of these spots, what you'll see is they'll have a space here which indicates that you're putting your meeple there, your worker there, and then it'll have a blue exclamation mark and a sand timer, a red sand timer. And what these indicate are your 2 options when you place your meeple there. You could either go to the blue exclamation mark, which is an immediate action, an immediate benefit. In this case, I would gain 1 money, 1 gold. Or you can choose to go to the red sand timer side of things. And what this tells you is you don't get any immediate benefit from this, but if you win the poker hand at this location at the end of phase 2 or at the beginning of phase 3, then you get 2 coins instead of 1. So the great thing about this spot is that this is a guaranteed, immediate, instant gratification benefit. While on this one, you can get a bigger ceiling, you have more potential for gain, but at the same time you have risk because you might not win the poker hand because somebody else might put their worker on this same location and compete with you for that poker hand. Or even worse, a player can try to take your same exact spot and duel with you. And if they defeat you in that duel, then you are wounded, you are knocked out, and you will not even get that benefit for the poker. Well, yeah, you will not get the benefit for having this. Well, let me actually clarify. You don't get this action for winning the poker hand. You actually just get this after the poker hand's determined, but you get this no matter what. At the resolution stage of the round, you're gonna get these 2 coins, but you need to be standing in order to capitalize on that. If you are wounded and on your back, the other player has won and taken you over on that spot, they're the ones who are gonna benefit from that action. This is what you would get. You would get 2 force resources. You would advance on the resource track with your force resource 2 spaces if you win the poker hand at this spot. So I'm going to choose to, I'm a very cowardly player, so I'm going to choose to go for the instant gratification, not risk anything, and I'm going to choose to get 1 gold by placing my worker on that spot right there. And I put 1 leg on the blue exclamation mark to indicate that that's the action I took. And I get to raise my gold resource up by 1. And now, the way that we determine what the dummy player is going to do is we roll one of these bullet dice, which are ranging from 1 through 6, and based on what they roll determines where the dummy player goes on the board. So let's roll this right here, and we've got a 3. So starting clockwise from Town Hall, we count 3. 1, 2, 3, and this is where the dummy player will go. And the dummy player is always going to choose to preferably go to the porches of the different locations, but in the case of the sheriff's office, the dummy player by default always chooses to take this spot, which is the leftover spot. Because at the end of the game, every player is going to be allowed to buy 1 building at a location where they are at, but just 1 building. However, whoever places their meeple here on this leftover spot will be allowed to buy an additional building that had been left over by the players, that had not been bought or purchased by the other players. However, they still need to provide or pay up the resources that building costs. But again, they get the opportunity to build a second building. So the dummy player by default chooses this spot, and now that spot is taken over. And now I get to place my second meeple. And if I wanted to, I could mess with this guy here and try to do that. But I don't want to do that. So instead, I'm going to think where I want to go. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go over here to the bank. And I'm actually going to risk it here. Instead of going for the immediate thing, the guaranteed thing, which would give me 1 more law, I'm going to choose to place my meeple on the other side of this. And I'm going to hope that he's still standing by the time of the resolution phase so that I can gain 2 more law resources. So that's what I'm going to do. And now I will roll this die here to determine the second action of the yellow player, the dummy player. And they rolled a 4. And again, I am counting clockwise starting from Town Hall. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this is the spot where the dummy player will go, on my very building where I'm at. The rival again prefers, in this spot, actually he prefers the influence spot, the right side of a location. So whenever a dummy player wants to go somewhere, they're going to want to go to the right side of things for whatever that is worth. Now, because he's taking that spot, he is going to have, he's going to want to have a duel with me. We're in the same spot, theoretically. I'm in the instant gratification spot. He's on the other side of the thing. Now, he cannot take my benefit because, again, I chose for the instant one, which gives me one money, 1 gold. If I would have chosen the other one, I would be at risk of losing that potential benefit. So what's going to happen to determine the outcome of this duel right here, first, the dummy player is going to roll a die. And that's a 3 right there. So the dummy player rolled a 3. That's pretty middle of the pack. And then we're going to flip over a random poker card and add that total to the die. So this is a 3 plus a 3, which is a 6. So now he has 6 attack. Now, I could roll a die and try to outroll him. Roll a 6 or higher. I believe if I roll a 6, it's a tie, and I believe that nothing happens. Let me confirm. Yeah. So after the duelist finalizes the powers, the player with the lower value or the attacker if tied. So the attacker actually loses the battle if we are to tie. Now, after I roll the die, I could always add my card to the value just by revealing it. I don't lose my card, just that, yes, if we were playing with human players, they would have the foresight and the knowledge of knowing that I have a 4 in my hand. But other than that, there is no risk to it. So I could add the 4 to my roll, and as long as I roll a 3 or higher, actually a 2 or higher, because I'm the defender and I win ties, if I roll a 2 or higher, I'm going to win this battle. I just need to make sure that I don't roll a 1. That's all that I need to do. So I'm going to roll this right here. I'm going to roll that, and I did roll a 2, and I will reveal this here, and that's a 4, and that's a 6 in total. Again, I win defense. We put this guy on his back and me on top to indicate that I won this battle. Now, a losing duelist or a losing cowboy in a duel does not lose the right to compete for the poker hand in this round, which would gain you two force tokens or 2 force resources, and they don't lose the right to compete or purchase the building that's located in this location. The only thing they've lost is the ability to gain the resolution benefit, which in the case of a dummy player, the dummy players don't even have resources. The way the dummy player scores is the buildings that they buy throughout the game are going to total up to their scores, and again, they're going to score according to their shares in the different industries of the game as the game progresses. So I've defeated the dummy player. Here I am. And now I've got to, well, that's it. We've both done our two actions with our 2 different workers, and we move on to the 3rd phase, which is the resolution phase. So now players are all going to reveal their poker hands. And for the dummy player, what they have is they have 2 cards. And in each location, you're going to pick the card for the dummy player that would give them the best possible poker hand. So the dummy player has a little bit of an advantage here because they have 2 cards that they can mix and match with whatever other 2 cards they're going to add to. So they do have a little bit of advantage. So we're going to go clockwise and compare. And basically, we're only going to compare in the places where I could potentially be at. So that's here, the bank, and the hideout. So in the hideout, or in the bank, we have a 3 TP and a 5 TP, and again, my 4 cowboy hat. And this makes for a straight right here, 3, 4, and 5. Now, this player can have a pair of 5s, that's one potential hand they could have, or they could have a 2, 3, and 5, which is nothing. So either one of those hands would not beat the straight. So the straight is the winner. So I have won at the bank. And what happens now that I've won at the bank is I get to capitalize on the resolution benefit of winning the poker hand, which is I gain 2 money or 2 gold. And that puts me all the way up from 2 to 4. There we go. Now we go over here to the hideout. Again, we have a 2 and a 1, and I have a 4, and that is nothing. That is a nothing with a high 4 card. They can choose to use the 2, and that would give them, the dummy player, a pair of 2s, which beats my nothing. So they would win at this location, which means I would not be able to get the 2 more force tokens added to my totals here. So I am done as far as that is concerned. Okay, and now we will move on to phase 4, which is where we go to Town Hall and we compare our hands there. So we have, again, in my case, I have a pair of 4s, 2 4s. And the dummy player would just choose the 5. And the 5 would give him a 5, a 4, and a 3. So that is a straight for the dummy player. And now what happens is they get to pick the first card to buy. So now they could buy a building card in any location where they're at. They're at the sheriff's office and they're at the hideout. And they get to buy it automatically. They don't have to worry about having the resources to pay for it. However, they need to go for the highest total victory points. So this one here gives them 4 victory points, and this one here gives them 1 victory point. So they would go for this one right here, Central Bank. It gives them 1 share in the mining industry, and it gives them 4 victory points, just like that. And we slide it under here, under their porch. In future rounds, I can choose to put a worker on the porch and benefit off of this power. And now we move on to me, because I have the next best hand, and I can buy any building at a place where I'm at. So I could buy a building here at the bank, and I could buy a building here at the hideout. Now, this here would cost me 2 force. This building here is the wagon repair. And it would cost me 2 force and 1 gold. And I only have 1 force. I have enough gold, but I don't have enough force. So I would not be able to buy this. And then this building here would cost me 2 force and 2 money. So I find myself in a terrible predicament where I was not able to get the resources that I needed. I failed to win the poker hands that could have gotten me 2 more force. And because of that, I cannot acquire any of these buildings. And now this person, the dummy player, is allowed to get an additional building. So they would get the building, and for the additional building, you're not limited to getting the building where you're located. You could get any building that you can afford. So he would be able to get this one, which is 3 more victory points for the dummy player. So the dummy player is off to an amazing start, and I pretty much have no chance of winning this game. They already got 7 points. Now, because the dummy player, again, had the best hand at Town Hall, they get to pick which, whoever has the best hand at Town Hall gets to pick which industry advances. All the industries start here in this blank space. We're trying to move them up to 3rd, 2nd, and 1st ranking according to the industries in which you have the most shares. So if you're dominating the railroad industry, you want to see the railroad industry be the most progressive and the most advanced industry. So the way that we determine what the dummy player chooses is you would look at the leftmost symbol of the last card that they acquired. And in this case, it is a railroad symbol. Oh no, actually, I'm sorry. It's the wagon symbol, the green one. So they advance the wagon symbol to 3rd place. It does not mean that the wagon symbol will finish in 3rd place. In future turns, the dummy player or myself can choose to advance it to 2nd and 1st. However, there is a rule where you can never have more than 2 industries share the same spot at the same time. So that does become a little bit of a tug of war as to when do you move this industry up, and so on and so forth. So the dummy player is off to an amazing start. We would keep on repeating this process. Basically, we would clear the table of all the cards here. We would replace any empty slots of buildings. First of all, if it's not a player's building, because the players, we keep our cards that are in our porches, but these random spots, non-player spots, what we would do is we would take the building cards in their porches and replace the empty slots with those cards, and then fill the building slot or the porch slot with a new building card. All right. And there we go. And we would keep on doing this. We would play this game over the course of 6 rounds. This was round 1, so there would be 5 more rounds. And as the round progresses, you have a better inkling of which industries are progressing, which industries have a better chance of being in that 1st and 2nd spot. You know, you have an idea of, you know, what what your opponent is doing as far as how much points they're gaining, how much shares they have in these different industries, and what becomes more and more realistic. You're trying to acquire different resources, again, the law, the money, and the force, and you're trying to optimize your turns by going to building spots where you think you're best able to win those poker hands, right? So while I was able to, win a duel here, and that was very helpful to get me some gold, I was unable to win the poker hand, and because of that, I failed to get 2 more force resources that would have been helpful to my purchasing of a building. At the end of the day, if you're not purchasing buildings, it doesn't matter how many duels you're winning. You're not getting the job done. You want to be purchasing buildings, and in order to purchase buildings, honestly speaking, you're going to need to, acquire lots of different resources, and the best way to accrue those resources is by winning these poker hands. So you want to go to the buildings where you think you could win the poker hands. I knew that it was iffy for me to do it here. Unfortunately, before I made my decision, the 2 dummy players cards are not revealed, right? So that's blind information. That's hidden information that I do not know. So you do kind of have to risk it. It's kind of like a real game of poker, where you just don't know if your opponents are bluffing, if they really do have that amazing hand or if they have a trashy hand. If you like Wild West themed games, if you like worker placement, if you like poker, this is a great game for you. Another thing I failed to mention is whenever you win a duel, which I did win a duel, you gain this wanted card. And the way the wanted card works is that, first of all, at the beginning of phase 3, you gain any resource of your choice, and at the end of the game, if you have the wanted card, you get two more victory points. Which just reminds me that I had the banker here. I forgot about that. At the beginning of phase 3, I'm supposed to gain a resource. So I would have just gained a force, which would have given me my second force, which means I would have had enough to pay 2 gold, which brings me down to 2, and 2 force, which brings me down to no force. I would have had enough to get this card. All right, I feel a little bit better about myself. I would have gotten the doctor's office, which not only gives me 2 victory points at the end of the game, but it also gives me 1 share in the wagon industry and 1 share in the mining industry. And as you can see, the wagon industry has already started to advance. So hey, I might have had a shot after all in this game. Well, that's pretty much it, folks. Again, you repeat this process over the course of 6 rounds until finally all of the different industries have settled into their spots of first, second, and third. The primary winner of the number 1 or first industry is going to get 5 points. The secondary is going to get 3. In the second ranking, you're going to get 3 and 2 points respectively, and the third highest ranked industry, you're going to get 2 and 1 points respectively. Also, you'll total all the points you have in your different buildings individually, and you'll add 2 points to the player whoever ended the game with the wanted card. And that is pretty much it. This is Tiny Epic Westerns. If you like Wild West themed games, worker placement, poker, small games or big games and small packages, this is a game for you. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining us at When Harry Met Board Games. Please, please, please make sure to hit the like button down below. Subscribe to our channel if you're interested in more board game related content. And follow us as we continue to just share this wonderful hobby of board gaming with the world around us. Thank you so much and have a great day. Bye-bye.